Today we're hunting in the library stacks for some common shelving mistakes. Let's see what we can find. Our library contains more than 100,000 physical books. That means when a book goes missing, it can really go missing. Sometimes knowing these common shelving mistakes can help us find lost books. But other times, a book that is lost might not be found for months or years. That's why it's so important to make sure our shelving is accurate every time. One of the most common mistakes I see occurs when people don't pay attention to the subject letters. Take this PS book, shelved in the PR section. This is a serious problem too because, as you can see, it's a bit of a walk to the PS's. Even if I suspected that this book was misshelved somewhere, I might not have found it. Here's another common mistake. As you can see, this is a juvenile book, but it's been mistakenly shelved in the main collection. It's going to need to be reshelved in the juvenile collection near the elevators. All of our special collection books have a little extra line of text at the top indicating where they should go. Make sure that juvenile is going in the juvenile collection, bestsellers in the bestseller collection, and so forth. Can you spot what's wrong with this book? The subject number, the first numerical line of the call number, should be treated as a whole number. The person that shelved this book must have accidentally treated it like a decimal. Read as a whole number, that book is call number T174, which is way more than T19. It should actually go all the way down here after T173.8. Some subject numbers do have decimals attached, and sometimes people forget to pay attention to that decimal. So here's a book with a decimal in the subject number line, shelved alongside books that only have a whole number. We see QA 76.9, but on either side of it are QA 76. Since there's a decimal, that book should actually go after all of these whole number books. Now, after that line, everything else is a decimal. Mistakes at this point become less common, but only because most call numbers diverge before we hit this point. If you do hit this point, it is really important to know that these are decimal numbers, which means that longer decimals are not necessarily worth less than shorter decimals. So in this case, I need to switch these two books because .C66 is actually more than .C614. Finally, there are shelving mistakes that have nothing to do with the call numbers. Take this shelf here, for example. These book spines are not lined up along the edge of the shelf. Some of them are very far back, and this means that they are at risk of slipping behind their shelf mates and getting lost. It also doesn't look that great. This is a really common issue to run into in the stacks. In fact, this part of the video, unlike some of the others, as you may have guessed, is not staged. This shelf actually looks like that. If you see a shelf like this, just try to get the spines more or less lined up. Here's another problem. These books are all crammed in here. Probably whoever shelved last just shoved their book in without taking time to move the end stop. And I get it. On the highest shelves, I can't even reach the end stop. But this is still bad for a couple of reasons. One, it's not actually healthy for the books. When they're all crammed together like this, it can damage their spines, and paperback books can become warped. Two, again, it increases the risk that we're going to lose those books if they get pushed all the way towards the back of the shelf. Every year we find a handful of books that get lost in this way, and there's probably many more that we don't find. I'm going to go get a stool and fix this. These books have the opposite issue. A few books must have gotten pulled from this shelf, and now the remaining ones have too much space. This isn't great with hardcovers, but it's really bad for paperbacks. Here's another real example, not set up by me. You can see that this shelf has completely collapsed because there was too much space, and now this book has fallen onto the shelf behind it. The paperbacks can become warped or damaged this way. More vulnerable books can become damaged this way, and again, it increases the chance that we're going to lose books in between the shelves. This paperback right up against the bookend is also not ideal. Over time, paperbacks shelved right next to the bookends can warp around the bookend. Sometimes ending a shelf with a paperback is unavoidable, but if the shelf can be ended with a hardcover book, that is much better. Some areas of our stacks are harder to keep neat than others. Let's visit the juvenile section again. You'll notice that because picture books come in so many shapes and sizes, keeping the spines lined up with the edge of the shelf is basically impossible. Luckily, these shelves have a special guard to keep books from slipping between. But between this and the fact that many of these books are so skinny, it can be hard to read the shelf. So when you're shelving here, make sure you're taking the time to pull the books out to read their call numbers, and make sure that you're shelving in the right place. Also, because these books are so thin, it can be really tempting to overcrowd the shelf. The juvenile section's shelves are divided up with these metal plates. These give extra support, which is needed in this section, and as a result, undercrowded shelves aren't so much of a concern. See, this is fine. But avoid the temptation to jam more books between the plates than fit comfortably. You'll need to either move the plate or shift a couple books to either side of it so that everything can breathe. Here's another challenging area, the music scores. There are a lot of heavy, slippery paperback books here and a lot of fragile items as well. And they all want nothing more than to fall over. That's why we actually have two sets of bookends in this section. When you shelve, you'll want to make sure that both sets of bookends are securely in place on the shelf that you finish on. Even if you do this, gravity might make these shelves lean over time. If you notice this in any section, just fix it. Finally, our collection contains some oversized books. In most sections, our oversized books just go on the bottom shelf of the stacks. And you'll probably notice these in our art collection, and in the sciences, and in geography, and in many other areas of our library. We try to keep the bottom shelf of our stacks open whenever possible for this reason. In the music collection, we have some very oversized books, and for that reason, we have a whole shelf that is dedicated just to those oversized books. It's the only collection that does this, and it's only because some of those books are almost as big as I am. So when you're shelving oversized music, make sure that you're going to the designated oversized shelf to put them where they belong. So there are some things to keep in mind while shelving or looking for a book in our stacks. We are very lucky to have a large and popular print collection. Tom, our collections librarian, does a great job of purchasing books that he thinks our campus community will find useful. Our job is to make sure that these books stay well organized and in good shape for as long as possible, so that they can continue to serve our campus community for many years to come.